Hello and welcome back to Gary's Garage. I kicked things off a little bit differently with a montage to start with, but during that you would have seen that I finished welding up all of the bits that we tacked in place last week. So the next thing to do is to sort out the top mount for this radiator because it's still flapping around a bit, and also make up some brackets so that these expansion tanks will be bolted to the car. Okay, so in order to do the top mount for this and the mount for the reservoir, I think I'm going to take inspiration from how they did it on the radiator to attach the fans. So I've got myself a length of aluminium solid round tube, and what I'm going to do is drill a hole into the top of this, tap it out to 6mm, and then slice it to length and use that as a mounting point. So a couple on top of the radiator and a couple to hold the charge cooler reservoir. Okay, so those are now trimmed down to length, and I'm going to go through these mounting points here rather than having yet another hole. So I'll whack those in there, and then I can mark it onto the radiator, and then we can go and get this sapped up. Okay, so when I tacked these into place, offered it up and they were just right, so I've just fully welded it up. So these now go on in here and should screw in quite nicely. There we go, that is nice and solid in there, and that is not going to go anywhere. And that has just pulled it slightly up off the rubbers, so should it expand slightly with warmth, then there's just a little bit of space for it to go. But that now is all of the welding done on the two radiators. So I think that means we need to try to pressure test it. And I'm going to need to try to find a big bucket of water in order to submerge them and put some compressed air in and see if we get any bubbles. But before I do that, let's finish off the welding on this charge cooler tank at least for the brackets, and then we might also look at finishing off this side just so I can get all the welding done, and then I can do all the pressure testing all at once. So that's now 3 mounts to hold it to the side panel, and the next thing I'm going to do is do exactly the same on the other one. Okay, so that's the mount done on the expansion tank for the coolant radiator, and the next thing to look at is blanking off this L that I've got here and also putting some kind of cap on it so that I can fill it, and we need to figure out a way that the expanded water from the radiator is going to get in and to the bottom and then get sucked back out again, and we also need an overflow on it just in case it does for some reason fill up. It needs somewhere to expel the excess water to. So I'll go and scratch my head a little bit more and try to figure out how I'm going to get something down in here to the very bottom, secure it all up and not leave myself in a predicament that I can't get to whatever's inside. Okay, so I have a plan. So what I'm going to do is, as I originally said, I'm going to take the filler neck off of this, and this has a hole in the side which is the originally, like the return. So I'll use that as the overflow. And then I have a radiator cap here which is just a blank, it's not a pressurized one. So that means that the hole opening is open. And I have found a banjo bolt and a small banjo. So that will go through the top of the cap, and I've also found a small screw-in barb that attaches to the banjo bolt. So that means I'll be able to screw this through the lid, put a hose on here to come down to the bottom. This will go off up to the top of the radiator, and then my overflow will come out the top and down. So that will be a nice low profile, because obviously I'm limited with height here, and that should work just as I want it to. Okay, so that's the filler neck put on the radiator expansion tank, and our cap is been modified to have the banjo, and I need to get hold of some 7mm hose that can go down into here and loop between the top of the radiator and this. The next thing I need to do, now that is all of the TIG welding done for all of the cooling system, both engine and charge cooler, I need to do some pressure testing. So I need to find a big bucket of water and get the compressor turned on, and we'll do some pressure testing. Okay, so now we're on to doing the pressure testing, and for the main coolant radiator I have borrowed a bicycle inner tube from my neighbour, so thank you very much, Adam. And what I'm going to do is cut it in half, sorry Adam, and then I'm going to attach one half to here, one half to here, and that will then give me hopefully a nice sealed system. And I've got the valve, which is a one-way valve, so I can put some air into it through here, and hopefully once it's submerged there'll be no bubbles. But if there are bubbles, then that means I've got a hole and I can pinpoint exactly where it is and go over it again with the welder, and then just we'll repeat this process until there's no bubbles coming from it. And then we'll move on to do the charge cooler radiator and the expansion bottles, and those will be done in a pretty similar way. Insert air into them somehow, probably using this inner tube. I don't even really need to take it to the water, because just there is a break in the core. So I have no idea whether that can be repaired or whether that means that the whole radiator is scrap, in which case I will have to start again. That is so frustrating. I will see if I can touch it up, but I'm not holding up any hope at all. I think this radiator is now scrap. So the core is now damaged and it's just not really repairable, certainly not by my skills. I did try with very light power and it just blew the hole out even more. So I'm going to have to either get another radiator and do the mods again to it, or just admit defeat on it and go back to plan A, which is to have a radiator made up by somebody who does it day in, day out as a living. But at least now what I could do is I could give them this with the modifications I've made and say, please make a replica of this, rather than having to take the car to somebody and leave it with them while they try to squeeze in a smaller radiator to the space I had available. So I'm not going to rage quit and throw my toys out the pram. I'm going to just sleep on it overnight and decide what I'm going to do, and I'll let you know next time. But I'm going to carry on and do the rest of the pressure testing. So I've still got the charge cooler radiator and the 2 header tanks. So let's get those done and hopefully have a little bit more success with those. Okay, so the first one I'm going to do is the charge cooler tank. And you may remember when I got the heater that in the box were a couple of hoses. And one of them just so happens to have the -10 fittings that I'm also using for the charge cooler, and it's just about the right length to loop round and join up. So that should hopefully give a nice sealed bit between the fittings, and then I can stick a cap on and pressurise it up through here. The cap with its 2-way valve should allow the air in, and we'll dunk this in the water and see what happens. Okay, so now the overflow tank. So just a couple of very small, massive pinprick holes. So I've marked up a few of them, the most obvious ones that I can find at the moment. So I will go over these and then go back to the water, and hopefully I've sorted all of these ones, and then if there's any more, sort that out and just keep repeating that process until I've got no more holes. So it's a little bit of mixed emotions at the moment. I'm really happy that these expansion tanks are all done. They're all airtight and they hold a decent amount of pressure, so that's a good thing. Bad thing, of course, is that I damaged that radiator. I don't know how I did it. It was either when I was cutting or grinding or welding, just something, and I just either nicked or melted one of the tubes that runs between the top and the bottom tanks, and basically that's not repairable at all. So that radiator now is totally scrap, but of course it is still a good template for another one. So I'm going to definitely sleep on it, and I'm not going to make any rash decisions about what I'm going to do. My original plan a few months ago was that I was going to have a brand new radiator made. One of my first few episodes, about episode 5 or 6, I was getting ready to have a new radiator made up to fit the old hole that I had here, and it would have been a slightly smaller radiator, and obviously with what happens with COVID-19 that couldn't happen because everything got locked down. And all I've really lost by giving it a try myself is a couple of weeks worth of time and about £20 worth of materials. So I'm not really at a loss. I can either go and buy another radiator and make the mods again myself, or I can still go with the original plan of go and get another radiator made. But this time I can take a radiator down to them and say, make a copy of this. And then they can get all the inlets and outlets in the right place, all the fans in the right place, as per my template. So I'm not really at a loss too much. Say only loss really is the time. But it's been a learning experience and my welding has got better. Yes, these end tanks, they did need a couple of passes to get rid of all the little pinholes, but they're airtight now, watertight. And you compare the welding that I've done on these compared with the very first bits of welding I did on that radiator, and it's night and day difference. So it's been a good learning experience, albeit a potentially expensive one, but most of what I'm doing this car for is the experience, the learning, and to try new things, to push myself, to push what I'm doing with the car. What I don't want is just a Meccano kit or a Lego kit. I could have quite easily, many years ago, gone and thrown my checkbook at a couple of companies, and within the space of a few weekends I could have had a really well sorted, tidy, well driving Anglia. But that wouldn't have been very fun for me. The fun is actually doing all this work. So I'm not too disappointed. It's been good fun. I've learnt a lot. And if I redo the radiator, then I can apply all my learnings and hopefully I won't mess this one up. And if I do, then I could potentially go and buy another one. And I'd probably still be under the cost of going and having a custom one made. Or I could just give it a couple of tries and then give up and go and have one made. So that is about all I'm going to do today. Unfortunately, without the radiator, I can't really finish off the cooling system. And I have just run out of time anyway. Oh yeah, and the charge cooler radiator. No leaks, so that's a positive. So thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and join me on Patreon. Links down in the description as always. So see you next time on Garry's Garage. Bye.